Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. The noise in the background is called rain, which for once is appreciated. The ground is just so dry. I went on a failed orchid hunt the other day when we had a mildly pleasant day, a bit of sunshine now and again and a little bit dull. I got rained on, but it was only a light shower. Managed to keep the camera equipment dry. And on that day I didn't need any camera equipment because it was a miserable failure. And then to my annoyance, on one of the Facebook groups to do with native English orchids, somebody posted lovely wonderful pictures of all the orchids they'd found in the same place I'd been to. But it was a vast area and I took the easiest route into that nature reserve effectively from a car park on the main road. And I found nothing. I saw a couple of nice butterflies and some very interesting birds. Some I hadn't seen for a long time too. But no orchids, zero. But then I sort of had a think about it, and the alternative route into that particular area would have been much lower down the hillsides. So in a more sheltered spot. That's where all the butterflies are. There's one of the butterfly sites I go on. The guy's just done a visit there and seen some very interesting things, so I'll have to go back relatively soon. And on second thoughts, that's where the orchids are going to be. You know, the south facing side of the slope, rather than the exposed top where I was, getting me wig blown off. But anyway, that's another story. There was nothing filmed, so obviously no event of the day recorded. But I will be back to that place. It's a lovely place, but the bit I was in was a bit exposed, a bit barren, shall we say. Lots of grass and not much else. Anyway, what I was just going to say was this. My only antelope dendrobium, this is the black antelope, is it? Yes, black antelope. I was really pleased with the two strong new growths it's doing, but I'm even more pleased now because it's decided to push out two mates. Yeah, so that you know, by the end of this season I'll have two fully matured canes, although they'll probably mature before the end of the season, and two more canes reaching maturity at the end of the growing season, which gives me a total of 4. And I haven't written off the original cane yet, because that cane hasn't bloomed yet, so it's still possible that could push out a spike. So this is a good growing plant. It's a strong plant. It already had a reasonable root system when I got it. The bark seems pretty good. It's rock hard. I'm pleased with that. So I've got no urgency on the repot front. In fact, it's probably going to stay in there till next spring because it's doing okay and I don't want to disturb it. So yeah, that plant's coming on well. Really looking forward to the blooms on that if I ever get any. But I see no reason why I shouldn't. It's obviously quite a strong plant, good root system, quite vigorous, strong new growths and 2 more pushing up behind. So yeah, providing I don't make any silly mistakes with it, it should do really well. I've got a few requests to do today. I watered half the pots yesterday and all of the mounted orchids. So I've got the rest of the pots to do today. And the couple of requests are on plants that are in, you know, those pots, the ones I'm going to get at today. So I'll pop those requests up as I get to them, plus anything else I find on the way round, of course. Right, request number 1, which I'm sure I've shown before, but I know new people join and don't necessarily watch every video I've ever made. Oh, there's a thought. But how do I water my mounted orchids? Well, very simply is the simple answer. I'll pick on a couple that are different. This is a Coelogeny, yeah. It's a bit of a creeper, a rambler, so it's been planted a piece down here and a piece here. It has plenty of new growths with new roots pushing out, even though those roots are aerial, but they will find their way either into the moss or, like round here, attached to the bark. And this is one that won't mind being watered a second day on the trot, even though there's no weather. And literally, this is a moss mount. To differentiate, I'll show you why in a minute. And all I do is that. That's it. It's very simple. I can get through these at a rate of knots. The hardest bit is getting them down from where they are, and if they've got a lot of moss, they drip. And I then have to hang them somewhere where they can drip straight on the floor and not on any other plants. But in this particular case, this lives up there and drips on the carpet. It's not my posh carpet. And I thought if I do this one as well, this won't mind being watered 2 days on the trot. This is more an aerial plant. Most of its good roots are actually aerial. So, you know, there's hardly any moss in under that plant. And you can see, although this was watered yesterday, the roots have gone back to white. And the idea with aerial roots, especially the thicker they are, the more important this is, because the thicker they are, the closer they are to being Vanda-like. Now, although this is, oh sorry, that was Silogeny fimbriata, the other one. And this is a Arengis, and this is Mr. Sidii. And my goal now is to get those roots green. In other words, once they are green, they can't really absorb much more water. So I just try and avoid the plant this time round, and I just pour water over the roots I can see and move them out round to whatever angle I need to try and keep the water out of the crown of the plant. And as you can see, the roots are now going green. The newest root is this one, and that will be the one that's the hardest to turn green. I call it new root syndrome. There's something about new roots, chunky roots like this, and it seems to take a while before the velamen gets itself in a state where it hydrates fast, like the older roots. As you can see, that one just won't have it. But that's basically it. Yeah? So the roots are nice and green now, and the tiny little hair-like root inside of that velamen casing has now got the ability to absorb, in this case, some nutrients and some moisture, while the velamen stays green, which will stay green some time. So that's the whole idea of this type of root, is to give the plant the tiny little roots inside. And then what I do is I double check that I haven't got any water in the crown, and if there are any drops of water on the tender new leaves or anything like that, I use Roger's patented method of getting rid of water in the crown. It's called huff and puff. Water gone. It's like putting an airline on it, quite honestly. If you do it in a pot that's recently been repotted with small bark, most of the bark will end up your windows and all over your floor if you huff that hard. So, but yeah, so that's watering my mounts. There's no need to do any more. It's just a repeat exercise. And most of what I'm looking at is actually still quite damp from yesterday because they were watered like lunchtime. The idea being they'll use that water up slowly during what is going to be a dull, not too warm day. It's not even reached 20 degrees in here yet, you know, and it's highly unlikely to get above 21. So that's watering the mounts done. Request number 1. Now this request I'll do in bits. It was a very simple request that's actually not that easy to answer. It's how do you tell when pseudobulbs are mature? Well, given the variety of pseudobulbs we can have on our plants, I mean effectively on dendrobiums, pseudobulbs are also known as canes, but nonetheless that's what they are. There's some examples there. Those are canes, tiny little thin bits at the bottom, getting fatter as they go up, followed by the leaves. And these are even more exaggerated, very, very thin at the base, and then a fat bit near the top, and the leaves on the top. But if it's a very young plant, this is not as easy to tell, and quite honestly would be less important, because you're trying to grow the plant on and get it to blooming size. And telling when pseudobulbs are of blooming size is an art form, and unless you've had it bloom before, they can surprise you. But basically there is a colour difference first on the leaves. The relatively new growths on here, let's find, new growths on this plant are quite good because they've always got a pink tinge at the bottom. So you'll find that as the leaves open out, these pseudobulbs, canes, only have 2 leaves. That's how they are. They'll never have any more than 2, just 2 on all of them. but they will get bigger nonetheless. As the plant matures and gets more strength into it, each leaf will be a bit bigger, up to its limit. But they're a lighter colour, and they always look fresher and cleaner. It's because they haven't been around for so long and had Roger bashing them around. But obviously an immature bulb is blatantly obvious on this plant. That's a new growth. You know, it's got no fat bit at the top and the leaves haven't opened yet. But on this one I can tell that, you know, this is an older bulb. It is mature but undersized. Again, mature but undersized. That doesn't mean to say it can't bloom on those canes, but I would suggest this plant's been grown on either from a very small division or possibly even a seedling. It could be a clone, I don't know. It is a hybrid. It's Polysema crossed with Aberrans, so Latoria type. And yeah, I'm waiting for blooms on this. At some point they will come out of the top and they'll be wonderful. But again, pink tinge on this one, nice fat bit at the top, and this is a mature bulb, so the leaves are not as fresh. And at some point during the maturing process of this particular bulb, before I got it, it obviously got a bit dehydrated and these leaves crinkled a bit as they were reaching maturity, at which point they've lost their flexibility. So any crinkles or anything that happen at that stage, you're stuck with them. Yeah. But on the latest growths, you know, they're nicely shaped leaves without crinkles, and that'll be my first bulb that I mature myself on this plant. So that's that type. And as I said, this request I'll do in various stages, looking at the different types of pseudo bulbs and how you can tell when they're mature. A lot of it is just look at what's there now and see if the new growths have made it to that size and shape yet. You know, if you have a look at Shelob, yeah, obviously this bulb here is mature. This is a new growth and it isn't. And then if you just twist this plant round, again a mature bulb, a maturing bulb. Oh, there's actually a spike on that. Yay! You sneaky... No, I could have missed that yesterday. That's tucked behind a leaf. I mean, it's got 4 blooms out currently. They've been out about a week, I think. And then it's got its, what I thought was its second spike, but now it has its third spike. And this plant is mature enough and strong enough with a decent enough root system. I expect every single new growth on this plant to bloom. I don't expect any less than that from this plant. It's just doing too well not to. But if you look at when it blooms, if I don't knock everything over, this pseudo bulb is just starting to fatten at the base. The leaves haven't quite reached full height yet. They've still got a little bit of growing to do. You know, there's a big fat mature bulb behind. Darker leaves straight away. Distinct difference. Darker leaves. Immature bulb, lighter leaves. They darken at the point that the pseudo bulbs mature on this type of Oncidium intergeneric. But this is flowering on an immature bulb, as is this one. Yeah? So that's how this one does it. The one that's actually got the flower spike on, the bulb is quite mature. If you look here, yeah? But that's still got a bit of plumping up to do. That will still fatten up a little bit. But the leaves are full size now, but they've still got their light colour. They haven't put two together. They haven't gone dark yet. So I can tell that this bulb has still got a bit of growing to do. Another request, while I've got this plant in my hand, was the best time to repot Shelob Tolkien. Well, you can see it basically. When the new growths are new, they have no new roots. Okay? As they start to push on, you know, this is what, well, say to the base of the leaves 3 inches, to the top of the leaves about 6 inches. It's pushing its new roots out now. Yeah? So, when this was about that tall, would be a good time to do it, just as the nubbins are showing, with great care not to knock them off in the repotting process. That rain's getting noisy. Still, the garden needs it. I'll put up with it. But with me, I would repot this now. I've already done it, so I don't need to worry. This has been recently repotted. And you can see as the bulbs mature, the new roots push down into the new media. If you repot that when the new growths are absolutely tiny, you may have 3 or 4 weeks to wait for the new roots to push out. Now, if the existing plant's got a good root system, that's fine. But if it's a plant that's lost most of its original roots, you're better off waiting till you see the new roots, because they will then go straight into the media and help the plant recover. Okay, so that's that. Another example, mature bulbs, darker leaves, immature bulbs, lighter leaves. But there are various stages on this plant. The oldest pseudo bulbs are quite desiccated, and I'd like to be able to say it's all right, that's how they are, but it's not. That's me. Yeah, I left it in its pot too long. The old root system started to go over, and I thought, oh, it's still in bloom, it's still in bloom. Blow the blooms. They'll come again. You lose the plant, you got to buy another one, or not have that one. Please yourself, but you know what I mean. So again, that's a mature bulb. It's got the dark leaves. That bloomed. But then this is the new growth coming out. It still hasn't got a pseudo bulb as such yet. It's just starting to swell. Its leaves have still got a little bit of growing to do, a little bit of maturing. And this one's hot on its tail, so this one's pushing on behind, but it's a little bit newer. Both are chucking out roots like they're going out of fashion, so it's replacing its root system as we speak at a rate of knots, so the plant will be fine. Now there's a rare sight in Roger's grow room. A concertina leaf. You don't see many of those in here, not even on the Miltoniopsis. I'll see if I can find some more now. I've spotted one. But yeah, that's just the result of when this growth was very young, it didn't get enough hydration, and the leaves sort of, they get stuck together, and they haven't got enough hydration to push them on cleanly. And so they get little stop-start elements as they're trying to grow, and that results in the concertina effect, as it's endearingly known. Somebody once said in a comment, there was so many concertinaed leaves, I didn't know whether they were going to water it or play it. Yeah, love them. And as a bit of a continuation from yesterday's video, I was having to shuffle everything round because my Phalaenopsis were getting far too much light. Various things, various reasons, but a shuffle round was necessary. And I had a huge big space there, and I said, I know exactly what's going there. It's the Miltonia Sunset. It's just opened. It's got some more buds to open on this spike. Its colours are truly at its best just after it opens. They are at its brightest and densest, and that sure is a beautiful bloom. But that's a big plant, yeah? Now, I left that space, I evolved that space while shuffling around, and that was earmarked for that plant. But that plant came off of that shelf, so I've now got that much space over there that I didn't have before. So I can carry on doing a bit more shuffling now. Next request is a strange one, and I'm going to do it now on the grounds that I haven't really thought about it before. What's the sort of normal growth patterns for Shari Baby? Well, just looking at this plant, I would say it does as it flipping likes, if and when and as it chooses. I've still yet to see a pretty one of these. They nearly always end up tatty looking, and it's basically because as the bulbs go past their prime, shall we say, they lose their leaves, but they take an age to do it, so they stay like this for ages, and they really spoil the look of the plant. I mean, you can cut them off. And quite honestly, these two and this one could be cut off. Once they've yellowed and there's no, or virtually no green left, they're not really serving any purpose on the plant anymore, because once the chlorophyll's gone, they don't photosynthesize, so they're not much use to the plant. I might even trim them off now I'm here. But as far as growth patterns are concerned, I mean, this new growth decided to push up and climb up the middle of the plant. It hasn't bloomed yet, even though it's effectively full size, and it's now pushing out another new growth, which will again be right out of the media. This new growth is a bit more logical. I've got a leafless bulb here, a very poor quality bulb there. I mean, I nearly lost this plant. Let's go back to the history. This was a very, very large plant that last time it bloomed, which is a fair old while ago actually, the blooms on Sherry Baby take quite a while to develop the spike. Yeah. Now this spike's been around a long time now, and it's only just starting to branch. It will be still some time away from actually opening its first bloom. They take a long time to grow and develop. And because it was doing that, I knew that the media needed changing, but it was in the days when I actually believed that it was better to wait till the blooms had finished. You know, I don't believe that anymore. The plant comes first. Always. So anyway, it lost its root system, and it was going downhill at a rate of knots, but it was a very large plant. So, when I got round to it, I took it out of its pot. I had hardly any roots left at all. I had some rotting pseudo bulbs that I cut off the plant completely, and the bits that were left got stuck in 2 pots. I've actually got another one up the back there that I'm just about to water. And this one has recovered nicely. And if I trimmed a few of those leaves off, it wouldn't look that bad. But it chucks out new growths from quite old bulbs that didn't even mature properly. Yeah. It chucks out new growths from nice healthy ones that have reached blooming size and are staying nice and plump at the moment. To the new growth coming out here. Another one there, another one there. And they're coming out from various places. As I say, it seems to please itself what it's going to do next. And the only good thing I would say is that if new growths come out at different stages, the potential for staggered blooming occurs. Now obviously if you get 3 or 4 new growths that all come out together and reach maturity together, you get the option of multiple spikes at the same time and a nice mass blooming, which is quite a show. I mean, the blooms on this are not what I would call stunning, but the fragrance is. And that, to me, is the only reason I grow it. I don't grow it because it's a pretty plant. I grow it for the blooms. And in addition to that, from memory, although it was a long time ago, it is capable of pushing up a spike on both sides. This one I don't believe is going to do it. As I said, this is I'd still class it as recovering and not fully recovered. And I think once this next set of new growths are fully mature, providing nothing goes wrong with the plant, at that point I'd class it as recovered, because each one of those new growths will do its own root thing. I mean, I got loads of roots down in the pot, don't get me wrong. As I say, it's a recovering, nearly recovered plant. And I think I am going to take some of those tatty old leaves off because they serve no purpose. But yeah, I'm playing a trick with this plant. Obviously the spike will grow towards the light. Now in a place like mine where I've got top light, I've got light coming in from above, getting something to grow towards the light often means it's just going to grow straight upwards, especially if it's not near the glass on the edges. But this one I've deliberately kept on the glass near the edges and pointed the plant such that the spike grows over the top of the plant. Now I could stake it, but I don't like staked spikes, so I like them to arch. And then all the flowers come out nicely balanced along the spike because they've developed naturally without having their aspect change. I like that. But by getting this to grow over the top of the plant, it's not going to take up any more space than the plant. If this spike had gone that way, suddenly the plant's taking up twice as much room as it needs. So I'm playing a trick on it and forcing the spike over the top of the plant. So I don't know whether that's answered the person's question, but growth pattern on this is a little bit random. New growths seem to come out as and when they choose, mainly off the latest mature bulbs. I mean, that's its normal pattern. But the fact is, on a reasonable sized plant, the new growths can come out in all directions, which is good. It keeps the plant circular rather than linear. There's a lot of the cotyledons just grow in a line, a long continuous rhizome, and they end up out the end of the pot. And this will be not far off coming out of its pot when these two growths mature. Now, it may well be that this gets repotted. I'll check my records. I don't think it's been in this pot a huge amount of time, but this one's never going to get repotted wrong ever again. This gets repotted when I see good new roots pushing out from new growths. I think the new roots actually push out as the growths get to about that big, which it's actually quite typical for Oncidium types, especially the hybrids. So this may well get put in one of my flat pots, as I call them. They're not as deep and they're quite a bit wider, and they allow this type of expansion to take place without having soggy media in the bottom of the pot, which you often get in a deep pot if you don't make thousands of holes up the sides of the pot, which I don't like the look of that, even though it does the job. So there we go, Oncidium Shari baby. Blooms quite a long way away, but at least there's going to be some. And quite honestly, I think that's the first spike I've had for 3 years on this plant. Had this plant ages and ages, and it's always been going downhill, never uphill, never climbing, never getting better. I think finally I've got the flipping hang of the thing. So yeah, it's doing okay. But you can see bulbs sat on top of other bulbs, climbing up, some going out sideways, some going vertical. It just seems to please itself. But as long as it's got a reasonable root system and you don't get it too hot, it seems to do pretty good, albeit not the prettiest of plants. But I'm just going to tidy that one up while I'm here. And straight away it just looks better. I mean, those leaves were serving no purpose, not really. There's not enough chlorophyll left in them, and some of them had some quite nasty markings on from when it was going downhill. But what's left is pretty green, and the leaves were only taken off of what are old bulbs. So they weren't really serving a purpose. These will be the next two to go, and they'll start going yellow eventually. But the leaves that are left on the newer growths aren't too bad, but they just are prone to getting marks on them. They're prone to getting spotty, especially on the back. So it never really looks a really pretty plant like quite a few of the Oncidiums do. They stay nice and green, clean, crisp leaves. And this one just doesn't. So you just have to put up with it. That's what the plant looks like. And you can't say what does it look like in the wild, because it doesn't exist. It's a hybrid. Boy, did somebody strike lucky when they did this cross. They put this together and that cross in there and made this mix and came up with something that smells of chocolate. Talk about pot luck. So this is this afternoon's task. I'll end this video off because obviously I don't want to merge it in with a repotting video, but I'm going to have a go at this giant cotyledony. 3 good new growths here, following on from the previous 2 good fat bulbs. I know there's some reasonable roots in under there, and it's been in its pot quite a while, even though it was potted by Burnham's, and the bark it's in is probably fine. But now's a good time to get these new growths away from the edge of the pot and get the plant back, so that those new growths, which are obviously going to be like that, have got somewhere to be. Otherwise they're going to be hanging over the pot. And my really big Masdevallia has already been in that pot too long. I just hadn't noticed. It was me that repotted it, so it's in reasonable media, but the fact that there's some moss in with the bark, it's been in there long enough. And at the moment there's no spikes, only new growths, so now's a good time to do that one too. So I'll end this one now, and I'll pick up on the repotting this afternoon. That might not get posted till tomorrow, but I will film it. That's 2 unusual plants, and a really big Masdevallia that might not have any roots, who knows, and my biggest cotyledony. Could do with some blooms on that.